recently you won the 2024 New Zealand Real Review Best Winery. So with that, why do you think Felton Road's at that level? And are there certain non-negotiables that are applied onto the team to make sure you get to that standard, also maintain that standard as well?
Maybe that's why I'm covered in wine was running around this morning. We, vignerons, we grow the grapes to the best of our ability, focusing on making wines that express the place where they're grown and, utilizing, the natural yeast, which, we haven't opened a packet of yeast here now for, I think this year is 20 years. So it's our own indigenous yeast. It's our own bacteria that completes the malolactic. Subtle use of new oak, no fining, no filtration. I mean, it's those kinds of things that are, I guess the non-negotiables, and making wines that are delicious.
Today, we're on site at Felton Road in Bannockburn, Central Otago, New Zealand, and we're chatting to the chief winemaker, Blair Walter. I'm Jason.
And I'm Trent, and we're on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. We're saying here, Jace.
Our saying is drink more, try more, learn more. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Blair, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. It's nice to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and such a busy time as well, right?
Yeah, we're just finished picking Riesling yesterday, and we're in the middle of pressing Pinots off to barrel. So 3 fermenters today and 2 yesterday. I think we're doing another 3 tomorrow. So yeah, it's busy.
Full on.
It's a critical time, and we want to discuss that. We want to discuss your wine journey, Felton Road, understand a bit more about what's made Winery of the Year from the Real Review New Zealand in 2024. But before we do that, we're going to ask you some icebreaker questions. So I'll hand over to Trent.
Okay, first one. So you must have drank a lot of wine in your days. Is there a most memorable wine or most memorable wine moment that you could share?
There's been so many, and it's going to be pretty difficult to single something out, but maybe something of recent times. Last year, I had a bottle of, it was 2 wines in the night. It was a 1953 Petrus and a 1937 Chateau Orson. And I got to share them with some classmates of mine from university because the bottles were gifted to me by another classmate who was the founder of Felton Road. And Stuart passed away, and in his will, he left me a dozen bottles for me to select from his cellar. And so I wanted to share them with my classmates. And so they were pretty special bottles.
And how were they showing?
Both of them were in exceptional condition. And interestingly, because I've only ever been cellared in passive cellars, all in the south of the South Island of New Zealand, so relatively cool temperatures, but still only a passive cellar. Corks were difficult to get out, and the 53 Petrus was incredible, drinking beautifully. It overshadowed the 37 Orson, but if you had the 37 by itself, it was still a pretty delicious bottle. Yeah,
fantastic.
87 years old. It was pretty phenomenal.
Fantastic. What's the last bottle of wine that you had?
Well, maybe just 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Lunch.
What was it?
Oh, we had a couple of Central Otago. So we had the Maud East Meets West 2018 from my good friends Dan and Sarah Kate Deneen at Maud Winery in Wanaka. And also another friend's wine here in Bannockburn had the Doctor's Flat 2020 Pinot Noir, another delicious wine.
Yeah, supporting NZ.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, research.
Research. Next one, favorite grape variety.
Well, it'd be pretty hard to go past Pinot Noir, wouldn't it? That's, definitely Pinot Noir.
Next one, a person past or present they'll love to have a bottle of wine with, and also what bottle would that be?
A bottle of wine is to be enjoyed with everybody, and to single somebody out is going to be difficult for me. Yeah.
Okay, next one, unique food and wine pairing.
I think Pinot Noir with fish is something that gets so overlooked. So and some of the most delicious wine and food pairings I've had have been Pinot Noir and fish, like with the appropriate sauce. I had a dish once. It was hapuka. I think you guys call it groper. Yeah. And it was encased in thinly sliced mushrooms with prosciutto around the outside of that, and then roasted, and then with a oxtail on the side. Just really great pairing with Pinot Noir.
Yeah, so it's not always whites with fish.
No. I think surprise yourself. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Where did you have that? I want to taste
it was
that.
here locally. Was a chef from up north in Whangarei, Brenton, and he's a phenomenal chef that just came out with that one, and I was just totally blown away.
Got to try that more. Last one, biggest lesson learned in your wine journey?
Humility, and the vineyard and the wine always knows more than what you do. So always take a back seat and listen.
Fantastic. That's icebreaker questions.
That's the icebreaker questions. And so what we like to do is understand your wine journey and really take it back to the start. What was it that made you fall in love with wine and pursue this career?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and my parents were both from farming backgrounds, so I guess I had agriculture in my blood. I went to university to study horticultural science, and because I enjoyed science, but I wanted a practical aspect of it, so hence the horticultural science. And within that, I discovered viticulture and winemaking, and viticulture and winemaking as an aspect of horticulture seemed a lot more interesting than market gardening or floriculture or orcharding. So I just fell into it.
Yeah, got it. And so you mentioned there that you've had some journey to kind of build that knowledge on how to become a winemaker. Are you able to share a couple of experiences that you've had either through study or working internationally, and what you learned from that's helped you in your practice right now?
That's interesting. So at university, I was studying horticultural science. I spent a year on exchange to Oregon State University, and I got involved with their food science department on a sensory evaluation panel, and we were blind tasting mainly experimental Pinot Noirs that were being made, and we would start off the sessions by sniffing a series of aroma standards on a Lazy Susan in the middle of the table, and there were 10 of us on this panel. And that was really my first exposure to tasting wine, was from a technical point of view and a sensory science. And because I knew nothing about wine, and I just found that gave me a really good grounding in tasting and to trust your palate, but also know that your palate is somewhat of an uncalibrated machine, and it requires calibrating, and hence why I think to be a great winemaker, you need to drink a lot of really interesting wines to help sort of benchmark and understand and fine-tune your palate. So that was an interesting one from study. And then winemaking, I think just working for winemakers where they have a real passion, a real love for wine and drinking great bottles, and understanding that approach from winemaking, that it's not all just about the science and the technology. That's got to be a lot of love and understanding for the vineyard and the resulting wines.
You mentioned benchmarks. Are there certain benchmark wines that you look to?
I mean, we'll look at anything. It's not, there's not just, one style, and it doesn't even have to be the varieties that we make. I can learn just as much from visiting, a region in Spain or Italy about viticulture and winemaking as it would be, going to Oregon or to Burgundy to look at specifically Pinot Noir. So I think just keeping your eyes open and your palate broadened is where it's at.
And part of our journey is trying different wines, and we're fortunate to have a wine here in front of us. It's the Felton Road Chardonnay in Bannockburn. And if we think about Bannockburn and this sub-region, is there anything quite distinct about the area that differentiates it from other sub-regions that translates into this Chardonnay?
Bannockburn's located in the southern end of the Cromwell Basin, so most of the vineyards are on north-facing slopes, and so it tends to be a little bit warmer than some of the other subregions. Being on the north-facing slopes, it tends to have more heavy silt-laden soils, and so that gives a texture to the Pinot Noirs. The soils hold on to their moisture a little bit better, so they're a little easier to farm, which is in our dry climate is important to have those more moisture retentive soils. And then Bannockburn is a very tightly confined subregion. It's bordered by the Calvert River in the north, and then it's an arc on the south bank. And in 2016, we completed a map of mapping all the vineyards of Bannockburn, and then following that, we applied for the GI. So we now have a geographic indication of Bannockburn, legally defined area, and so it's the only subregion of Central Otago to have its own GI.
So it's quite hot here, and also just on the way in, I saw Bannockburn, like I think desert reference there as well. So it's also dry here as well.
Yeah, it was a term that the gold miners gave to Bannockburn when they arrived here. Bannockburn, heart of the desert, and we get the name Bannockburn from the gold miners that came from the Victorian goldfields, so they brought a lot of the place names with them. Bannockburn, Bendigo is another one of our subregions, which are all Victorian goldfield sort of names. So that's some interesting aspect to our history.
Yeah, so specifically for this Chardonnay, how do you think that translates into the Chardonnay in terms of that hot, dry?
We get, Chardonnay gets sufficiently ripe, but we have quite cool nighttime temperatures in Central Otago leading up to harvest, so we retain a lot of acidity. The pHs are usually quite low in the wines, and so they're quite vibrant and tight and somewhat minerally, and they're not sort of full-bodied and rich and opulent and ripe sort of stone fruit flavors. They're much more reserved. And we have to celebrate that with the way that we go about harvest decisions and vinification. So because of the delicate fruit character and the high acidity, we use virtually no new oak. They're all fermented with their indigenous yeast, full malolactic, because we have to, because of the high acidity that we start with, and makes a wine that's probably a little bit more reserved, a little bit more delicate than sort of fuller-bodied, richer Chardonnay style.
Yeah, definitely get a lot more textured, but you get those elements of, I don't know, like honeysuckle, kind of honeycomb kind of coming through as well, but with that kind of acidic drive. Is this kind of representative of what Felton Road Chardonnay is?
Yeah, absolutely. 23 is a great vintage for us, and we'd say an absolute benchmark. And the style of this wine, the Bannockburn, hasn't really varied over the years. We've been very careful and subtle with new oak. It's less than 10%, usually around 5% of the barrels are new. The other barrels can be up to 20, 25 years old, so a lot of neutral oak. But in the barrel for 13 to 14 months to allow it time to settle clear so that we can bottle it without any fining or filtration.
I think also what we've seen as well, a lot of focus on organic and biodynamic practices as well. Is that something you kind of trying to drive, push, and what do you think that actually does in terms of the wines?
Yeah, we converted to organics back in 2002, introduced Biodynamics in 2003. So for us, it's, we hardly even think about it. It's just the normal way of farming. And in fact, in Central Otago, almost all of our colleagues, the good wine producers are almost all organic and in Central Otago. And if you look at the figure overall, it's 30% of the total vineyard hectarage in Central Otago is certified organic or biodynamic. So it's a bit of it's a normal thing for us. And what it provides for the wines would be the opportunity to have the wines to be more site expressive, being able to better articulate their vineyard origin because you haven't introduced, soluble chemical fertilizers or, other vineyard practices that, organics and biodynamics enhances, means the wines have got the opportunity to be more site expressive.
One of the colleagues that mentioned your name was Duncan Forsyth. We had a chat to him, and he said he was kind of on that journey of transitioning to organic with you and kind of helping develop the Central Otago wine region. He said a statement where he said, "Your wines are probably the only fine wines within New Zealand." I think it was along that kind of intention. What is a fine wine? How would you describe a fine wine?
Fine wine. You need Nigel, the owner of the winery, to expand on that one, because it's a topic that he's pretty hot on at the moment, and he's been speaking publicly about it. That I think where Nigel gets a little upset with the term fine wine is when it becomes mixed with luxury wine, and nowadays with luxury, incredibly expensive wines that might be north of $500, $800, $2,000 a bottle. It just gets a bit silly. So I think it's something that's going to come into question even more and more as people just think about, really, can a wine be really worth that much? We tend to be a little bit more reserved in our pricing relative to, I guess, our the reputation that the winery has. But saying that, the wines are not inexpensive still. But that's enough that we can have a viable business and pay our employees well and look after the planet in the meantime as best we can. But fine wine, I think, is maybe what Duncan was referring to is encapsulating the whole of the whole estate. Everything that you do, that your estate grown, your estate made, your estate bottled, that you present your wines to the world, and you have a following globally and recognized for consistency and quality. That's how we would sort of regard fine wine.
I'm kind of associating fine wine with quality, but not necessarily kind of high prices as well, or stupid prices.
Yeah.
There's one quote, you mentioned Nigel as well, trying to make Felton Road among the world's best. And recently you won the 2024 New Zealand Real Review Best Winery. So with that, why do you think Felton Road's at that level? And are there certain non-negotiables that are applied onto the team to make sure you get to that standard and also maintain that standard as well?
Maybe that's why I'm covered in wine. Was running around this morning in the winery. That some non-negotiables that we have some fairly sort of strict or careful winemaking techniques that we go about. I'm heavily involved in the winery during vintage and the all the winemaking process. We vignerons, we grow the grapes to the best of our ability, focusing on making wines that express the place where they're grown, and utilizing the natural yeast, which we haven't opened a packet of yeast here now for, I think this year is 20 years. So it's our own indigenous yeast. It's our own bacteria that completes the malolactic. Subtle use of new oak, no fining, no filtration. It's those kinds of things that are I guess the non-negotiables, and making wines that are delicious.
Yeah.
The wine has to be just delicious.
And we've got a delicious wine in front of us here. We've got the 2023 Bannockburn Pinot Noir. And this is one of two Pinots that we're going to try. Were there any specific stories that you wanted to share about this Pinot?
The Bannockburn Pinot, like the Bannockburn Chardonnay, is a blend of the fruit from our properties, and in the case of the Pinot Noir, it's off all four of our Bannockburn vineyards, so Cornish Point, Calvert, McMure, and the Elms. The percentage varies from year to year, but the interesting thing about the Bannockburn Pinot Noir is that it receives the exact same viticulture and winemaking as the single vineyard wines, the Cornish Point, the Calvert, the McMure, the Block 3, Block 5. So there's no hierarchy, or there's no, having to, farm to a particular budget or any, different treatments in the wineries. So it's has the opportunity to express Bannockburn as its underlying character rather than a single vineyard. That's what we like about the Bannockburn.
And I think the thought here that translating into the wine was around wine philosophy. We were having a chat to a winemaker, and he said he likes to talk to winemakers about their wine philosophy specifically. And we were having a chat in the car while traveling around New Zealand saying, what is a wine philosophy, and does it actually differ from people to people. Are you able to share? What's your wine philosophy for Felton Road?
Well, I think, I touched on it before that, it's just got to be delicious.
Mm.
And for me, the sign of the most interesting or the highest quality bottle on the table is, when you're having a dinner party with your friends and there's several bottles, it's always the one that's finished first or the one that, between if you're just having dinner with your spouse or partner and you having lovely dinner and chatting, and then all of a sudden you look at the bottle and where did that go to? Because you just couldn't put it down. Other times, we can have a dinner and there's only a third of the bottle gone, and you're just like not interested in having any more because it just doesn't have that deliciousness. So, for me, that's the real key is something that you can just attach to, and it just ticks all the boxes, and you just can't keep away from it. So I think those are the kind of wines that I like to drink and I like to make. So that would be the philosophy, deliciousness.
Do you believe in the term wine philosophy?
Wine philosophy?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what. What you'd say,
Okay.
Give me an example. Or...
Well, when we were talking to different winemakers, a lot of them talk about minimal intervention, natural yeast, and so forth. And we were wondering, is that the wine philosophy? Is that how they're trying to approach things, or maybe it's just a general term on how you?
Yeah, not sure. I think maybe because we're so entrenched in being an estate or a domain that grows, makes, and bottles, and all focused on our own vineyards 100%. That that would be our perhaps wine philosophy is we're wanting to express the wines of this place of Bannockburn, Central Otago, and then taking that to the world and having wine lovers all over the world being able to enjoy putting a bottle of our wine on the table with their other favourite wines from around the world. To me, that's...
I might put another spin on it. So we're tasting this one now. If I tasted the same wine 20 years ago, would that kind of style have changed or evolved in terms of a Felton Road Pinot Noir?
I think so, because our vines are getting older. Our viticultural experience is just greater and greater every year. Winemaking-wise, I've had wine philosophy. There we go. There it is. Since the beginning of deliciousness from the winemakers and wineries that I worked for around the world before starting here, that it was about just making something that's just delicious. So I think that it's just becoming more entrenched in the wine as compared to say 15 or 20 years ago for sure, and still more consistent.
Yeah, are you still trying to push for better and better quality wines, and if so, which areas?
Oh, we need to absolutely maintain consistency. So trying to even out anything untoward in terms of the season, whether it's climatic or some other challenges that we might be facing that we try to get on top of. So we pile a huge amount of resource into that. So the consistency for sure is a big thing.
So consistency, but you also have seasonal variations as well. Like, where do you find that balance between expressing the seasonal variation versus providing consistency in the wine?
I think you'll never the seasonal variation is absolutely always going to be there, and that's one of the things that we love about wine that we don't get in beer or or spirits is that every year is going to be different, but you as a conscientious wine producer, that you should be doing everything that you can to achieve quality and drinkability and deliciousness from year to year.
Mm-hmm. I think deliciousness is coming through, particularly when we're tasting these wines. And this Pinot, I don't know, you said it earlier with the Chardonnay, but being delicate and elegant, I think is really something that comes through.
While having drive and power as well, it really comes through in this one. And the tannins are big but restrained as well at the same time.
Well, 23 years is quite a powerful vintage. It is one that we're very, very excited with. If you were to ask me, I'll probably preempt it.
Yeah.
Favorite vintages. It's invariably within the last 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Because we're just getting better and better all the time.
Yeah.
So 23 we regard as our most interesting vintage to date. Prior to that was 21. Prior to that was 19. Prior to that 15. So it's you're always learning, and you're always able to with vines getting older and deeper roots, that there's more inherent quality just available to us.
So how old are the vines now?
The earliest vines were planted in 1992, so we're 33 years old. Yep.
And that's kind of hitting its peak. Is that what people say?
Well, there's a thought of 25 years. So maybe we're a good number of our vines are sort of at that 24, 25 years plus now. Cornish Point was planted in 2000. Calvert was planted 2001. Block 3 and Block 5 were planted 92, 93. So we're definitely getting into a sweet spot for sure.
We got a good opportunity to try some of the Pinot Noir from Calvert, also 2023. And so how would you say the single site shows itself within this wine?
Well, Calvert it's only 1 kilometre east of the Elms Vineyard, where we're at the winery here with Block 3 and Block 5. So it's climatically, it's very, very similar. The Elms Vineyard and the Block 3 and Block 5, just a little higher elevation and north-facing slopes and quite heavy soils, whereas Calvert, a little bit lower elevation and very heavy silt soil also, but a little more wind exposed at Calvert. The vines struggle in the silt soils and are always naturally moderate yields on the Calvert vineyard, smaller bunches, smaller berries. And as a result, the wine always has quite an interesting tannin profile. Aromatics and the flavour of the Calvert vineyard tend to be more floral and really lovely perfume in the wine.
Definitely, it's a lot more gentler. We're coming off the Bannockburn onto the Calvert. You see that kind of juxtaposition between, I guess, a bigger, hotter vintage versus this one. I think similar vintage, but a lot more delicate and elegant.
Yeah, it's one of our favourite wines, the Calvert. Yeah. It's a very nice vineyard to farm, just with its natural balance in terms of the way the vines grow. And the fruit quality is always absolutely superb.
So I'm going to try and apply some personality. So with the Calvert's like this kind of elegant, kind of floral kind of personality. With the Elms, Mackmuir and Cornish Point, what are their kind of personalities?
Cornish Point is usually a lot more forward. It's more distinctive and quite boisterous. It's really quite in your face. And when you look at the photograph of the vineyard situated on the edge of the lake, it's a pretty impressive sight, and it tends to do that in the wine as well. It tends to be quite showy. And whereas the Calvert and the heavy silt soils, more reserved and a little bit more inward looking.
And the Elms and the Mackmuir, do they also have the Pinot as well?
Yeah, the Mackmuir is a fun one for us because it's our last planted vineyard in 2012. So the vines are younger, but the soils there are very deep, very rich, and a lot more loam and clay, and that tends to give the wine a lot more plushness and depth on the palate. So Mackmuir is quite a distinctive wine. We just started bottling it as a single vineyard wine for the first time in 2021. So we're still coming to grips with it ourselves. But it's really, really quite exciting.
I'm hearing a lot about clay, loam, silt type of soils in other areas. You talked about schist. Mm-hmm. Is it different soils here? And is that what kind of makes it quite different in terms of the Pinots and the wines? Yeah,
in the Pinot, we don't have so much schist. There is it at Cornish Point. There are alluvial soils at Cornish Point because it's close to the river, and so they're rounded schist and quartz gravels at about 1.5 meters depth. And on the Elms Vineyard, where we have schist fans, is where we plant Chardonnay, so the white and Riesling on the schist gravels. For the Pinot, we prefer the heavy silts and loams, the more clay-like textured soils.
We saw some rocks on some plates around the side here. Is that what you're describing right now?
The schist.
I might grab it.
There's maybe the
This one?
that's an example of the pedogenic lime that we have in the soils, where at around 1.2, 1.5 meters of depth, we get the calcium in the soil because of the very, very low rainfall that we have in Central Otago, that we get incomplete leaching. The calcium accumulates and then it reacts with the carbon dioxide in the soil, and then you get calcium carbonate, and it's called pedogenic lime, or a soil derived.
Is that different to what's on?
Yeah, no, that big clump on your right there,
Is
that's pedogenic lime. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that if you touch it, it comes off in your hands as
It was
white.
crumbling already.
Yeah, it's white and powdery.
show
That's
that.
just pure chalk. So they don't. We don't have marine derived limestone in Central Otago, and of course, limestone is revered in vineyards around the world for the quality that it can produce. And so we don't have any marine derived limestone, but we do have this very high calcium carbonate active lime in our soils from the pedogenic sources.
Does that translate into the texture? Because with the Calvert, I kind of get this, it's like a powdery texture within my mouth, and maybe that's the tannins. Does that translate into it?
Potentially. It's pretty hard to sort of pinpoint it in terms of texture. I think more of the silt and the clays is what's providing texture and giving that sort of softness and velvety, almost chocolate sort of coated tannins as where you get from the silty, heavier soils.
So with Felton Road, I see the focus around Chardonnay, Pinot and Riesling. We're seeing other areas, a lot of experimentation with, Pinot Gris, Chenin, other varietals. Is that because you guys know your soils, you know what you should be planting, and has that always been the case?
Well, the vineyard was originally planted with Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and we actually had a tiny amount of Sauvignon Blanc in the early days that we made for the first 3 vintages. Then we pulled it out and replanted that small block to Pinot Noir. But yeah, there's other varieties that will do well in Central Otago, but I guess we've built up a following and a reputation for those 3 varieties, and we just prefer to stick to our knitting and focus on those and not make life too difficult. And we, as it is, we make 6 different Pinot Noirs, 3 different Chardonnays, 3 different Rieslings, so that's more than enough wines for a portfolio.
Keeps you busy.
That's enough, yeah.
And if we think about the future for Felton Road, is there anything coming up in the future that you want to share with our audience?
No, nothing at all. More of the same. Hopefully just, learning more and more all the time and just getting better and better at our craft. One of the things that we've focused on for quite a number of years is reducing our carbon footprint. So we're a member of International Wineries for Climate Action, an international group of wineries that was founded by Torres in Spain and the Jackson family winery or group of wineries out of the United States. And so we joined them about 3 years ago, and we get certified ISO carbon inventory, and trying to do everything that we can to reduce our carbon emissions in line with the global aim of being net zero by 2050. So lightweighting glass is a big thing, but we'd already been doing that. Minimizing fossil fuel consumption by electrifying our vehicle fleet and solar panels on the winery. We started trialing spraying with drone, so absolute carbon zero with a battery operated drone. We purchased our own last year and got certified for that. So yeah, lots of initiatives. Preventing shipping of samples by air freight. So air freighting of wine is incredibly carbon intensive. So lots of initiatives to reduce our carbon footprint. So and we're actually looking at the moment for a piece of land to plant trees on to offset the carbon emissions that we can't reduce in the meantime until technology captures that.
We're probably at the tail end of the interview. Did you have any last messages you wanted to share for our Australian audience? Anything about Felton Road, Central Otago, New Zealand?
I mean, we're just a small vineyard, a small winery in Central Otago. It's a small grape growing region of New Zealand. We're at the southern part of the South Island of New Zealand, and we have a really interesting climate and soils for making, I think, high quality wines, and we're extremely appreciative of the interest that we have around the world, but in particular Australia, which is our number one market. So long may that continue. That we enjoy such really nice support from Australian consumers and the Australian wine trade and listing our wines in restaurants and retail. So yeah, just a big shout out and a big thank you to Australians.
Fantastic.
Right, and thank you for your time, Blair. Really appreciate it. Trent, did you have any last reflections?
Last reflections is what I've come across in this interview is like the focus on environment, the land, the vines as well. Biodynamic, organic, reducing carbon footprint, everything, trying to have that minimal footprint and trying to make it better as you left it, as you take it in the first place. So I see that as kind of reflecting the wines as well and the expression of place and quality wine as well and delicious wine in that. So been a pleasure speaking to you today, Blair.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming to visit us.
Yeah, perfect. I was just watching you out there having lunch with your team and I got a really good sense of what's important to you because there's so much going on, yet you want to make sure you're having lunch, spending that half an hour together because team must be important. And I think that shows a good sense of what's important, but also the focus that you have to make great wine. Like, things are changing. You got to be able to adapt and respond. And that's what you've done and made sure you focus on creating great wine. So we do encourage our Australian audience and listeners to try Felton Road, try the wine, visit the winery. It is a beautiful
Glorious
site out there. Blair, thank you once again. That's us here at the Wine Up. As we like to say here, drink more, try more, learn more. Thanks all.
Thank you.